Hey, how's it going? Today, DevOps interview questions. I'm going to show you the questions I got when I went to interview for a job at a crypto exchange. It was a platform engineer, but you could easily just call it DevOps engineer as well. I'm going to show you what happened. So these are the breakdown of the rounds that I had, and it's increasingly common to see this. If you've never had as complex kind of number of rounds as this, it's going to happen to you eventually, because lots of companies are doing this now. Start off with an HR screen, 3 technical rounds, finally a behavioral interview. Let's run through this. Before that, we're on 82 subs, we're heading towards 100. We've got 65 videos, all kinds of things, tools, non-tools, my thoughts, all kinds of different stuff. Please support us, subscribe, and like this video if you really like it, and let's move on. First one is HR screen. This is fairly typical, but I'll just share the questions. Internal recruiter, can you introduce yourself and what is your salary expectation? So here's my advice. For the introduction, make sure you've already got a story prepared ahead of time. 30 seconds, no more than that. Keep it concise, not your whole life, nobody cares. For the salary, know what the range is beforehand. A narrow range like 10K range, or even just a single value figure. Know what it is beforehand, because you don't want to give too low that you're going to get ripped off and also show that you don't really understand what you're worth. You don't want to give too high that you're going to price yourself out. So you got no excuse. Know what your range is before you go into the interview. Actually, I had with this job and also others that they told me, oh, you know what, actually we pay more than that, and they just straight up told me what they pay. So more and more recruiters are being transparent. Know what your value is before you go in. I would also advise that you prepare ahead of time what it is that you like about the role and why you match it. So when they ask you why are you applying for this job, you can say, well, I like X, Y, and Z, and by the way, I already have A, B, and C that you're also looking for. So you're giving them light bulbs in their brain when you mention evidence of a great match already at this early stage. So that's the HR screen. Now, I had a troubleshooting exercise. This was a few engineers, which is typical, and it used a HackerRank environment so everyone can see at the same time what we're doing. And I was allowed to Google and use ChatGPT. So it was a situation with 2 pieces of compute infrastructure, containers/VMs, and you couldn't curl from one to the other. Now, this is fairly typical, but I just want to break this down slightly. Look, something I said to them was, I wouldn't expect this to be a CPU or a memory or a disk issue, because I would be expecting something slightly different than a pretty standard kind of network error that I'm getting. I said, so this is probably networking, I'm going to go along with that. And what I did do was I went to the source container or VM, and I did a curl from there of localhost, and it came back with an Nginx web server. So I knew immediately that there was a problem getting into that machine, but not within the machine itself. And in the end, I Googled, ChatGPT'd for how to look up firewall rules in Linux, because I wanted to see if the blocking was at the operating system level. I couldn't see outside it anyway. And in the end, I found the command because I couldn't remember it. And I saw that there was a deny rule. I deleted it. Everything was fixed. The main thing is that I was kind of leading, but it was almost like a pair troubleshooting exercise. So I was also at the same time as I was going along explaining my logic, what I was doing, why I was making a certain decision, and asking them for feedback. What did they think? Do they have any hints, etc., etc. It's very important that you don't work in isolation. Now, I also got asked a few basic pop quiz style questions, in this case on Kubernetes, because it was relevant to the role. And yeah, this can be quite hard if you're not been working on this recently, that you will need to refresh your memory before going into the interview. So for example, how to ensure a pod runs on each node, it's a daemon set. How to specify which nodes to schedule the pods on, it's a node selector. I did actually in the end get a little bit confused and give an overcomplicated answer, but I don't know what I could have done otherwise. It was a sudden pop quiz question, and that can happen, So next one was a coding and programming exercise, and a couple of engineers, and again they used a HackerRank environment so that they could see as I was coding. and it included like a little test thing as well. So you could hit a button and it would run a bunch of tests. So that would prove that, if your code runs with no errors, it doesn't mean that it's actually a good solution. It has to pass the test. So that was pretty cool. And this example was a kind of log file program or a logging program. It wasn't giving the expected output, and I had to fix it. So I had to like add a couple of lines, edit a couple of lines, that type of thing. They actually told me that I could just use pseudocode, and in the end I did actually do it in pseudocode first, and then I used Python. I've done other, so I didn't have to use any new functions, write any new functions, or import any new libraries. But I have had other coding exercises where I have had to do these things. So, you've got to be prepared for a little bit of variation here. But I like this test because, to me, it focused on the core logic of how do you think, what is your approach. So, my advice for this is brush up on your Python skills. In most of these tests, they may say you can choose any runtime that you want, but they will almost always allow you to use Python. So I went to Exercism, which is a great site. It's a hands-on way to learn programming languages, 100% free. And I did the Python track. Not the whole track. I did about a quarter of it. And that was a few hours worth, and it got me refreshed on loops and data structures and stuff like that, which is exactly what I needed. Because, for example, in this, I had to choose a type for my variable, and I decided to choose a dictionary at some point. So you have to know what the various types are, and you have to remember them whilst you're doing it. If you can, try pair programming. I don't know, maybe with someone at work or somebody else. Try and simulate you leading from the front and other people you're working with in the team. You're leading, but you're still working as a team. That would be great. And ideally, you've already got your own GitHub profile with one or more repos with your own code. Of course, you might have some AI assisted code in there, but if you use AI, it's very high level, kind of architecting the software. It's not really testing this low-level stuff that they're looking for. So they will ask you questions as well, by the way, on your code. So even when it passes all the tests, they might say, what are possible improvements you can make to it. They might even say, oh, you could have done it this way instead, or can you think of another way? And what are the pros and cons of this alternative? What are the trade-offs? Those are very common questions. So alternatives, and also improvements. Very common. Be prepared for those. The best way is to actually be hands-on prepared. Definitely don't read a book before you do this. No book is going to help you. You've got to be hands-on. So then I had a system design interview, which you may think is crazy for DevOps, and I happen to kind of agree with you. I think it's a good skill to know. I would recommend to everyone. I don't think it should be part of the hiring process. But anyway, developers get this all the time, and increasingly you'll see it in DevOps interviews. So it was a couple of engineers, and we used some drawing software. I chose Excalidraw. You may know Draw.io or Diagrams.net, the same thing. These are for infrastructure design. Typically, you might have like a bunch of AWS icons, you're linking them with arrows and that type of thing. That is not what system design is. System design is very developer-driven. You are designing flows, typically API flows, into microservices, into things like databases, including the basic schemas and stuff like that, queues. So it is totally different. System design is totally different to infrastructure design, and in my opinion the best software to use is Excalidraw. It's super easy to use. Now my advice to you, if you've never done system design before or you're not very good at it, go to a YouTube channel called Hello Interview. Hands down, it is the 100% hands down the best channel, the best tutorials, the best videos for system design. There is a book, by the way, by a guy called, I can't remember his first name, Alex Zhu, XU, Alex Zhu. His book's called System Design. He's written 2 books. They're considered the best books on system design. However, if you have an interview in a week, you've got no time to read even one of those books, so watch these videos instead. They're amazing, by an ex-FANG engineer. After that, go to their website, and there's an intro there. I'm going to show you this, but it's also going to teach you some core concepts you need to know. And what happens is, if you do this, you'll end up having a muscle memory for system design. It cannot be faked, right? You've either got it or you don't have it. And once you've got it, really, you'll surprise yourself that you'll be able to go to any use case and design a system. It's really amazing, and it's really not that difficult either. What I also advise you to do, try to do system design, look it up if you can find it already online, or do it yourself for the company that you're going to be interviewing for. Guess what? I did that beforehand. I prepared. I thought, right, not necessarily a crypto exchange, but what does an exchange system design look like? And I was able to find some helpful information on Medium, and I was able to make my own design beforehand. And when I went into the interview, I thought, right, are they going to ask me to design Twitter or TinyURL or Uber or Netflix, or are they even going to ask me how to design their company systems? And guess what? They asked me to design their company systems. So I was fully prepared, and in the end I aced this. You are going to get questions as well, and they're going to be related to this system design that you come up with. So if you go here and you do these videos, you will come to understand that what typically happens is you make a lot of assumptions and try to make a very basic design to begin with. And then what will happen is they will ask you questions. They will say, right, okay, so what happens if you scale this? Or, you know, can it handle this? Or what would you do in order to satisfy this use case? So you'll get asked all kinds of questions about your design, and basically what happens is you'll end up iterating your design and making it more complicated. And you'll be asked as well, just like the coding exercise, you'll be asked to justify some of your decisions. So the interviewer will say, well, why did you choose this? Or, you know, is there an alternative? Is there a better way of doing it? What is the downside of, let me give you an alternative? What are the pros and cons, the trade-offs if you choose option B instead of option A? So they're going to be highly relevant. Those are the kind of questions that you're going to get in a system design interview. So this is what the channel looks like. Just go to YouTube and search for Hello Interview, and it's this guy does most of them, and he's ex-Fang, and they're amazing. I don't need to say anymore. They're incredible. Go check him out. Super easy to digest. He's a great teacher. And this is his website, and I just want to show you here. If you go to like Learn System Design, and what you're going to see here is these are the same as the videos. It's just that they've also written up notes as well. And this is like a deep dive into particular, let's call it, components that you can, as an architect, choose in your system design. You know, not essential. If you've got time, look at them, but this is more important. Core concepts, common patterns, key technologies. Read all of these before you go into your interview. They're going to reinforce everything that you've learned already. I'm not going to go into more detail, but trust me, just read them. He even tells you to do that here when he says learn system design in a hurry. If you read this, he's basically going to tell you, go here and read those. So finally, my last round was a behavioral round, and this is like, you know, when people say to you, oh, think of a can you describe a project that you did that you were particularly proud of, or can you describe a conflict that you had and what did you do to get around it, and all this kind of stuff. So in this company, it was actually done by a couple of managers, which I don't know. Normally, this is not done by managers, in my humble opinion. Normally, managers are just there to rubber stamp you as a already preferred candidate. But in this case, this company uses their managers to actually deliver the behavioral questions. Really, there's no reason to do that. HR can do this. It's more common that HR will do this. But anyway, it was standard questions. So you can look those up. My advice is, Google them, and ahead of time, write down answers to these standard questions. Make them concise so they're easy to remember, and use the STAR method, which is very common. Google it if you don't know it. It basically stands for situation, task, action, result. And they may even be scoring you on this and looking for each of these components. It's very standard. And as part of this, a lot of these you're going to have to use examples. So by preparing ahead of time, you'll be able to pick out examples from your resume in the past, rather than in the interview suddenly having to come up with good examples for whatever they suddenly ask you that you never actually rehearsed before. So definitely prepare ahead of time. You can easily Google, and I'll make a video at some point if it's not there at the time of when you watch this, but you can easily find these behavioral questions. Just Google behavioral questions. Very easy to find. So in the end, what was the outcome? I actually failed this process, which I think is kind of unbelievable, because I believe that I aced all those technical rounds, And, you know, I presume I passed the recruitment round, because why would you send me through all the remaining 4 rounds? And even the behavioral round, I think I did very well. I think I gave good examples. I think I had very mature conversation. And they failed me. Now, I want to just say, let's read through this, but I just want to say up front, don't always take face value feedback that is given, because sometimes they don't want to get sued. Sometimes they're not going to be 100% truthful. Sometimes they think they're being truthful, but they're not. Sometimes they've misunderstood you. All these kinds of things. You know yourself better, although you can be in self-denial. But, you know, don't take feedback on face value. It's just one opinion, and it's likely to not be 100% accurate. So let's read through this. You shared interesting experiences and perspectives which added context to our discussion. But there were times when your answers went broad and didn't directly answer the questions. So this affected clarity. Focus on concise and specific answers, and you'll be able to better communicate effectively your key points. Now, I personally find this a little bit strange. Interesting experiences and perspectives. So this sounds like the behavioral question. It doesn't sound like, you know, me answering Kubernetes questions. And by the way, what I want to say is most of the questions that I had, if you think about it, right, they were behavioral, they were pop quiz like Kubernetes, or they were related to the technical exercises that I was doing. So experiences and perspectives tells me that it was the behavioral interview. And apparently I went broad and didn't directly answer. Well, I don't know what that means. I was not trying to hide anything and avoid the question. Possibly I gave more detail than was required. I certainly didn't get lost. I definitely focused on the question. So I'm not really sure what they're talking about there. I would say maybe I could easily be guilty of thinking out loud, and that lengthens the answer. But I also don't want to be accused of giving a not detailed enough answer. But yeah, okay, behavioral questions should actually be answered concisely. So perhaps I wasn't concise enough. But it's a bit of a weird way, if you ask me personally, it's a bit of a weird way to say you should be more concise. And also to hold that against me, to reject me on that basis, I find a little bit strange. Let's look at the second section. Additionally, your motivation for joining whatever company wasn't entirely clear. Okay, now I've got to say that's 100% BS. 100% BS. I specifically remember mentioning at the recruitment interview, and even at the first technical interview when we had just a chat afterwards, I specifically remember talking about this role being a great match and why I wanted to join the company. And everything fit like a glove, like a jigsaw with all the pieces. So this is complete BS, and I'm not sure why they've said that. Maybe they just couldn't think of anything better to write. Maybe it's just a standard thing. It's 100% BS. And refining your thought process to be more focused on topics discussed will help you. So let's read this again. Refine your thought process. So my thought process wasn't refined enough, therefore I lacked focus on the topics. So what are they talking about here? Are they talking about the pop quiz Kubernetes questions? I don't know. I mean, I didn't give one-word answers, and it could have been better, but I was thinking out loud. I mean, there's not really much time for me to, refine my thoughts. I do try to be as concise as possible. I'm a detail-driven type person, but yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by this. My takeaway from this is similar. It's basically saying the same thing up here. Here it says too broad, and here it says refine your thought process. In both cases, to be more focused. So I think possibly I'm guilty of not being concise enough, but all I can say is I did my best. And my overall thought on this is, apart from this BS part, 100% BS part here, is their overall theme here is you need to be more concise, and I understand that, but is that really a reason to fail me? I pretty much aced all those technical rounds. I aced the system design, and the programming exercise was pretty good, and the same with the troubleshooting one. And the recruitment opening round was very straightforward. So did I fail based on the last round? Am I expected to just ace every single round and failure at the last round because I use a few too many words? That's going to reject me? Yeah, I'm kind of surprised by that. I really feel like this whole bit of feedback here is kind of a cop-out, and I actually think that if they just said to me another candidate was slightly better, I would have been okay with it. And I really liked the process. I really enjoyed my conversations with the people. Very disappointed by the feedback. Anyway, that's all I got to say on it. So hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. Get us to 100 and check out my other videos. I will see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye bye.